Oh, well, let's stand by then for a second.
Okay, all right. We'll wait for the sign.
Okay. I don't have any public. Is Commissioner Hanson in?
It sounds like that's the problem.
Okay, hold quickly. Oh, Justin? Sorry, sir. It's quiet. I'm just gonna admit all, because it just keeps bumping back. I have admitted him like 50 times.
Maybe he could,
He's bouncing back.
maybe he should disconnect and retry.
There we go, Jim Hanson. Now see. Commissioner Hanson, are you in?
I am, but I'm in on my iPhone. For some reason, this iPad, the
Okay.
Commission iPad, just, yeah, it just wouldn't, I could see you trying, it wouldn't happen.
Well, we can see you now and hear you.
Okay, we're
Okay,
ready.
it's on my iPhone. So I've got to put it in the right place. There we go.
Okay. Director Wong, looks like everybody is connected, so we will go ahead and start today's session, our work session on the fiscal year 2021-2025 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan, our community programs prioritization, and our presentation today will be by Ms. Christy Inselman. Christy, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Madam President and Commissioners. Christy Enselman, Planning and Projects Department. I'm here today to continue the discussion regarding community programs for the 21-25 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. As a reminder, staff was tasked to meet with the Commission early and often to discuss the community programs portion of the plan. Staff brought the annual report to the Commission.
We're
What's
seeing
wrong?
Commissioner May. You're not seeing the presentation. That's what I'm seeing.
It's shared. Is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes, I can
Okay.
see it.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Staff brought the annual report to the Commission in January, and this will be the third work session to review the progress of the community programs portion of the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. Staff conducted outreach efforts that included obtaining prioritization requests from all of our partner agencies. We held a public open house on March 12th and conducted an online campaign through social media. This resulted in a total of 436 community program requests to be reviewed and prioritized. There are 95 community program projects currently in the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. 32 have been scoped and are awaiting programming, and that remains 221 that still need to be scoped and evaluated. The prioritization criteria was identified by the Commission, and a copy was provided as part of the packet. These include, if it was included on a partner agency request, distance of the proposed project to existing attractions like schools, civic facilities, transit, and commercial destinations. If the project is identified in a neighborhood plan, will it create connections to pedestrian facilities, whether it improves the ADA facilities or creates some, as well as the others you see here on the screen. The commission was provided a list of the community program requests that have been ranked based on that criteria. The list is broken into categories: crossings, pedestrian facilities, and bike facilities. The list also identifies whether a project is currently programmed in the integrated 5-year work plan, whether it has been scoped and awaiting programming and funding, or whether the project needs further evaluation. Once projects are ranked, we utilize the information to inform our decision-making process to decide which projects are scoped or programmed in the integrated 5-year work plan. Sorry. They are evaluated for inclusion in the integrated 5-year work plan based on their overall points, type of facility, agency ranking, available funding, and estimated costs. So the next steps would be some upcoming meetings to come back to you. Staff will be back with revenue discussions and initial drafts in upcoming months, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Christy. Commissioners, Sarah? Commissioner Baker? Oh, can you unmute?
Okay, now I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a couple of questions.
Go right ahead.
First of all, Christy, the list, I looked at the list, it's really quite long. So some of it on there shows unscoped, and so when will the scoping occur, particularly if it's fairly high up? I mean, how does that factor in?
Madam President, Commissioner Baker, that is being evaluated currently. We're coming up with a list of projects to be scoped. Our scoping team is. Brooke Green is the head of that, and it will be scoped in the next month, I believe. Is that the time frame? Yes. Approximately 20 to 25 community programs will be scoped this year.
Right, but you have them in different categories. You got crossings, you got pedestrian facilities. Maybe there's only 2. Bike facilities, no, there's 3. Economic development, miscellaneous. So are they going to be spread out through those different categories, or, I mean, how will you determine that?
Madam President, Commissioner Baker, yes. When we go out and scope, it's a variety of projects. There will be crossings, there will be ped facilities, there will be bikeways. It's a mixture of all different types. But we look at those prioritization criteria, we look at the location, we look at partner agency requests when we're making a decision to go out and scope a project.
Okay, and then are some of the projects on the list more than once, like in different categories? Like would one be a bike facility and a pedestrian facility and a traffic, for example?
I can barely hear what she just said.
Okay.
So I apologize. Yeah. Commissioner Baker, yes, they should be just in one, but some of them are a multitude of, and in the column it'll list what types they are, whether it's a bike and a crossing, because we'll have that many times, a bikeway and a pedestrian crossing, and possibly some other gap filling portions of it. But yeah, some of them cross across all 3. They're not specific to just one or the other.
Because I thought I recognized, the name more than once, but since the list is so long, it's kind of hard. So maybe there could be some designation with a color or something, or like for example, if Field Street, Creation Street, Olive Street. If that goes into a different category, maybe it could be put in like red or something, also in traffic or whatever. Just so because it's with so many projects, it's really confusing to keep track of them all. Could you hear that?
Yes, Madam, Commissioner Baker, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good idea. That'll make it a lot easier to track.
Madam President?
Okay, just one moment, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Commissioner Hanson requested to comment, and then we'll get right back to you.
There's a few comments. Can you hear me okay, Christy?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh, good. This is good. There's more detail in terms of the analysis of what goes into setting priorities. I too was, like Commissioner Baker, a little confused because the priority list is very similar between bike facilities, ped facilities, and ped crossings. And it seems to me that they ought not to be separated out because, yes, there are some places where there's going to be or ought to be some enhanced bike facility, but there's also going to be a crossing nearby or connected with it, and there's probably some pedestrian facilities, so there's a lot of overlap. So I wonder if we can't just integrate community projects to do the analysis of the projects and integrate them more. It looks like, because there is no category for traffic, at least in terms of analysis, and yet on the spreadsheet, there are a number of those things that are sort of left into that list called traffic are actually pedestrian, bicycle, pedestrian crossing, ADA related stuff, walking to schools, whether it's safe to have a bike facility on that route or not. There's nothing under, so I was just wondering if let's just take that next step and integrate the projects so that we then see how they enhance the whole system rather than pigeonhole one aspect of a project or even call it a separate project when it really ought to be integrated if we're fixing sidewalks and bike lanes and we're doing a crossing in and around an area. Would that be difficult to do? It just seems to me it would be pretty easy because those evaluation criteria are very similar between those three areas.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, yes, we will definitely look at that anytime we for the most part, we tried very hard when we were prioritizing these to group the entire project together so that they're not spread out over the multiple categories. But we'll go back through and reevaluate this to make sure that we're grouping those, as you said, to integrate all of the components of a project.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to visit with Ryan about a number of projects, and most of the ones we talked about covered multiple areas. So it just didn't make sense to say, well, this is a bike project, because it really isn't just a bike project. There's some pedestrian safety that needs to, and the same criteria. If it feels unsafe to cycle on, it's probably going to feel unsafe to walk along, and so it ought to be integrated. Or if there's a gap, a connectivity gap, bicycle connectivity gap, there's probably a pedestrian connectivity gap, and there may be a pedestrian crossing issue. So it just makes sense to integrate them.
Yeah, Commissioner Hanson, that's what also helps when we go out and scope a project. We evaluate the full extent to make sure there's not something else that also needs to be done. And that's what boots on the ground really make that more defined.
Yeah. The issue that that runs across so many of them is speed, and we've seen as traffic has dropped off during the last 3 months, we've seen more speeding and in fact fatalities. So the issue of speed to me is even greater than the issue of average daily traffic. On your slide, you had both ADT and speed as sort of one of the criteria. And yet when we look at that criteria listing, speed doesn't even come up in the bike projects or the pedestrian projects, although ADT does come up in the pedestrian projects. It's the T1. And then speed comes up in terms of speed limits with respect to pedestrian crossings. And the reality is a sidewalk along a collector, for example, or even a local road where there's speeding, it doesn't feel safe and people want to use it. Certainly they don't want their kids cycling their bicycle along it. And oftentimes what will happen is kids will choose, even though there's a bike lane, they'll choose to cycle on the sidewalk, making it more dangerous because of speeding, not necessarily because of volume. Can we do something in the analysis of ADT so that first criteria, that it's about speeds and volumes? And in fact, I put speeds at a higher point because that's what people will react to when they're integrating, when they're making a decision to use a non-motorized facility. Can we do that?
Commissioner Hanson, is certainly something we will look into.
So that'd be a real high priority. Every single day we see requests for traffic calming or speed management. Every single day we see it, put in the speed hump here, do something about speeding cars in my neighborhood. So it is integrated, and it just looks like it's an afterthought if we don't do it as an upfront evaluation on all of these. I have one more question, and that's on this P4 criteria under all three of these, which is cost benefit, and yet it doesn't really describe what the benefits are. So what benefits do we measure to determine cost benefits? And I assume the cost is the cost of the project as well as the cost of maintenance. But what is the benefit, so we understand what the ratio is?
Madam President, perhaps I can help with that question.
Mr. Head, thank you.
Yeah, it was the Commission's desire that we have a cost benefit or a benefit cost analysis done. What we use as a means to normalize this is we use the technical points. So where the project, all the T criteria, the T1 through 3, we use those points divided by the cost of the project. So, where it has a higher, the more points it gets means it's the more beneficial in those technical, it's more important from those technical criteria divided by the cost. So that's where that comes from. It's not a large part of the process, but it is incorporated to an extent because the benefits are a little bit more qualitative than quantitative, and we try to maintain a quantitative process.
Okay. So if they mute.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, Commissioner Hanson, was that your last question? Okay, looks like it. Commissioner Gold? No?
Commissioner Hanson, he muted him, so there we go.
So, yeah, it's difficult because it's like I don't want feedback, so I mute, and then I can't unmute. So, well, I think it's sort of that circular. So my suggestion is that we redo that cost-benefit, come up with a return on investment analysis, and use the input we get from the partner agencies, because it just doesn't make sense if you're already saying, well, the benefit is distance to facilities, distance to schools, and so forth. Well, we can put those numbers in. But really, the cost-benefit analysis is really about the return on investment. If we're going to spend this money and we're going to maintain it, what are we going to get in return? And that is a reduced amount of carbon in the atmosphere. I know we use that analysis at Commuter Ride. What is the economic value to the businesses that are there? What is the reduced demand for car trips and therefore reduced demand for more road facilities? What is the health and safety? Cities get into that. Cities do that. Their general purpose governments do the analysis of a lot. So my suggestion is that we go back and redo that and have the general purpose governments come up with a return on investment so that we know what that benefit is. I think if we just plug in the same numbers we've already done, it just doesn't make sense.
Okay, all right. So, a few things for you to take a look at, Ryan and Christy, and get back to us whether it's doable and feasible as we move forward. Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, this is my comment / question is just designed to hopefully save some time as we go through the rest of this process the next few weeks or months. And that is, we haven't yet had a discussion about what, how much, or if we're going to spend some money that we would normally have spent on chip sealing on other projects. And we probably, at least hopefully in my estimation, will not have this situation before us again in our lifetimes where we're having to feel like we're having to defer for a year the chip sealing and then utilizing that budget for other things. I think we need to have a discussion sooner than later about how much of that particular budget that was formerly allocated to chip sealing we might use to either accelerate some of these projects on this particular integrated 5-year work plan sheets that we have before us, or accelerate some of the projects that are citizen partners, not necessarily public agency partners, but citizen partners have asked us to do. I think this is the absolute best opportunity we have for that for a long time coming. Thank you.
So we'll take a look at that. Thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to respond to a couple of Commissioner Hansen's comments. You know, the number one reason for me that we undertake these community programs projects is safety. And you can't put a price on that or a value on that. So I don't think it's a good use of staff time to try to go in circles to figure that out, to come up with a cost-benefit analysis. And I would hate to think that someone would say, well, the cost is so high that somehow the project would get kicked out. Because for me, safety is the most important item, and you cannot put a price or a monetary value on that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Arnold. Commissioners, any other questions for Ryan or Christy? All right, hearing none. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Madam President,
Commissioner Baker.
yeah, could Christy just email us that last slide which shows the upcoming dates?
That would be beneficial. Christy, can you get that out to everyone?
Yeah,
Actually,
Madam President, absolutely. I can send those meetings out to the commission.
Thank you very much.
You would send the slides. Just send the slides.
Did you hear that, Christy?
I did not. Can you repeat that?
If you could just send out the entire slide presentation, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, Madam President.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The President, may I mute without having difficulty unmuting?
Commissioner May, I have now
Yes.
made it that so everybody is muted upon arrival, but you are able to unmute yourself. We were experimenting to see if once people came in that we would be able to give people permissions, but that does not look like the case. So Commissioner Hansen, if you want to try to mute yourself and then unmute.
So we know that it's working.
Okay.
We're good?
Good? Good to go? All right. Thank you, Stacy, for giving that a try. All right.
No problem.
Director Wong, we can just move right into our pre-commission. We will
Absolutely.
call that to order. And our first order of business here is any general housekeeping items or issues or concerns that any commissioner would like to bring up? Hearing none, we'll move on to our agenda. Any comments?
Madam President,
Commissioner Baker?
only that, since the main item on our, regular agenda is the, subdivision in Star, and we are only a recommending agency. You know, I know that we make that clear, but I would hope we make it crystal clear, because, I tend to think that we're going to get a lot of comments about land use that we have nothing whatsoever to do with, so.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Point that out. And then, of course,
We will do
also,
that.
depending on how many people show up, you know, we need to hew strictly to the 3 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Last
Commissioner
year was-
Baker.
Last week was a horrible.
It was an adventure.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So hearing no other comments, Director Wong, we'll turn it over to you for your admin and operations report, please.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. A couple things I'd like to share with you. First off, this morning, I sent the Ada County the Ada County Commissioners our request for reimbursement for our COVID funding to include what's projected through 31 December. So far, the numbers are good. Our current expenditures as of today are $42,387.98. The 60-day reserve project that I briefed you on last week is focused at $7,562.73, and projected additional expenditures through December 31st in accordance with the federal guidelines and the state guidelines is $6,100. So I have sent her the commission the spreadsheet that shows exactly where we've spent all the dollars in lines with the federal program, and I'm sure, and they're going to take it under advisement as to reimbursing the highway district. If they are unable, then we will go back to the governor's team and have them redo the current distribution, because as you recall, the special taxing districts were not initially involved with the distribution of proposed reimbursement funding. So I will keep you posted on that. We are supporting on June 13th the Children's Museum in Meridian's Touch-a-Truck operation. We believe we can do that safely. We have several vehicles that will be out with volunteers. I'll keep you posted on that, but it goes to a great cause, and we do want to support that. As of this morning, we have not received any additional information from the city regarding their thoughts on transforming 8th Street to support restaurants. As I briefed you last week, we stand ready to support them, but we've received no additional information at this time. Just a very quick update on the security condition changes I instituted earlier. We did have a young person that was acting quite strangely, attempting to come into the building on several occasions. We accomplished the appropriate procedures, and Garden City's finest escorted him away. So there was no damage to the building, no issues, but it was an interesting scenario. I'd like to share a couple things with you for the record that I may have already briefed you on, but at the same token, for our retention rate this year, to date it's 97+%, which I think is outstanding, and safety and compliance training is at 99% completion. As of yesterday, we've only had one personal injury and one vehicle accident through the year. Again, that's not bad operations at all. For the things that I'm trying to keep in front of you, year to date, we've had 601 development applications through the system. We've had 631 plan submittals through the system. We've had 3,170 permits through the system year to date. As you can see, growth continues regardless of a pandemic here in Ada County. For small cell licenses and stuff, we have 75, this is with Verizon. 75 sites are already installed. Of those 75, 47 sites include 5G antennas. We have 60 additional sites with approved conditional drawings, or construction drawings ready to go, and an additional 67 sites that are in the pre-application phase. So these things keep rolling in. I think I shared this with you yesterday, if not, my apologies, but the Linder Village STARS Phase 1 project, which involves the Winco and stuff in that area, has been paused as of early last week, as the developer is continuing to try to secure funding. We don't have any updates on where this is at this point in time, but I want to assure you that there have been no ACHD roadways or safety impacted at this time, and no safety issues whatsoever. We'll keep you posted as to how this goes, but it is an interesting development. And then finally, Year to date, we have installed 342 bike lane miles completed, and the average PCI for your residential collectors and arterials is 83, which is in the extremely very good category. Currently, we do have NCI, that's the gold standard for assessing infrastructure. They are on site doing their thing again, and we'll have that update for you as soon as they're completed. So with that being said, that is my report for you for today. I stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments or questions for Director Wong?
I just have
Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, in your operational report, you indicated that we've saved $110,000 on fuel.
Yes.
And I would assume that's a combination of not actually using fuel, and also the fact that when we did use it, it was like $1.85 or something like that. But anyway, this is kind of in keeping with what Commissioner Goldthorpe pointed out earlier. We have some savings from, obviously, the gas. We have some savings from the chip seal. And the conditions of the sides of the roads are just abysmal now, because I guess the service crew, we haven't been able to get a hold of them. And are we at the point where they're going to start working?
Commissioner Baker, I believe your question is, do we know when the Sheriff's Department's detail is going to start working? If that's the question, the answer is no.
Okay, well then, here's my suggestion. We should take some of that money, and we should, because we're not hiring the temporaries for the chip seal program and the flagging program, we should hire some temporaries and specifically to get out there and clean off the weeds, which in some areas are as high now as 2 and 3 feet. And they're going to dry out, and somebody's going to drive by with a lit cigarette, and they're going to set the place on fire. We need to get a handle on this. I don't think we can wait until the sheriff decides it's safe to get people out there in the outdoors, in the sun. So I think we should just spend some of the money, hire some temporaries, and start getting a handle on this stuff.
Madam President, Commissioner Baker, we will look at all options. The one thing I would caution's the wrong term, but just share with the Commission, is that currently there are a tremendous amount of job openings across Ada County that are going unfilled. And the reason they're going unfilled, according to the folks in the governor's office and folks that look at these things, is that right now most people can make a lot more money by not coming to work based on the COVID-19 support program than they can by going to work. There was an interesting discussion this morning on KBUI on one of our local businesses who has 20 openings right now that are very good jobs, and nobody's applying because they don't need to. We will look at all options. I'm going to assume that we'll be in a similar situation, but at the same token, we still have to be in alliance with what the governor's phasing program has stated. And right now, we are kind of limited in the number of people that we can have in one area at one time safely. But we will look into that, and if there's a way to put some dollars on this to work through the weed issue, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had the discussion with our maintenance team just yesterday regarding the weeds around the Cloverdale facility, which I'm told is somewhat natural grass or whatever the term is. So we will look at that, and I will be back to you shortly on it.
Well, it couldn't hurt to try, number one. And number two,
Absolutely.
There's a lot of college kids out there that have been sitting at home that have no jobs, and they're not going to be getting unemployment because they haven't had a job. They've been in college. So I think there's a way to market this, and I think there's a way to be a little bit proactive. So I think we should jump on it.
Yeah, definitely needed for sure. Thank you, Commissioner Baker, Director Wong. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Hansen.
Yes, Director, I was forwarded a copy of the May issue of the Institute of Transportation Engineers magazine, and there's a great article in there on moving towards zero fatalities. It's on page 27. And since we're a member of ITE and folks have already probably received that, if you could get a copy of that article to the commissioners, I think that'd be very helpful. It really does go to the whole issue of moving towards zero deaths, which reduces the number of injuries. Safety is the number one concern, whether it's a road project or a bicycle project or whatever. And I think the analysis that's being done by transportation engineers around the country, as this article indicates, we could benefit from. So if you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Commissioner May, Commissioner Hanson, I'll take care of that as soon as we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Wong. Any other commissioners would like to make a comment or have a question for Director Wong? All right. Hearing none, then looks like we've got, what is it, about 10 minutes until we start our regular commission meeting.
Yes, that's true.
Thank you, Director Wong.
Change the slide.
How are you, Ken?
Good, how are you today, sir?
Good.
What a...
There you go.
Well, it's been so difficult to...
Doesn't show. I don't think it shows. Take a look. I'm here. You can see me here, right? See me here? How about here?
No, I can't.
No? It's gotta be this one.
I'm ready for us to start meeting in person. It's hard to hear people on Zoom.
Right now, Mr. McQuaid.
Was he Zooming too?
Mm-hmm. $7.50.
We don't have any outlets in this thing, do we?
There's one right here, behind you. Two over here. There has to be something. The screens are plugged into something. Yes.
Oh, there is one under there. Oh, under the table to get to it.
Commissioner May, it is 12 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Director Wong. I will now call our May 27th Commission meeting to order. We will begin with the pledge. Director Wong, if you would be so kind.
You all stand and join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. As you all know, last week we had just a little bit of rain out there, so I do want to take this opportunity today to recognize and thank our amazing drainage crew here at ACHD. They were literally working around the clock. You can see all their faces and names right there on the screen. They were working around the clock to ensure that ACHD was able to answer all the multitude of calls that were coming in, and this continued throughout the week, even after the rain stopped, as they were answering additional calls to come out and clean the drains with the accumulated debris from all of the water. Herculean task, extremely well done. We're very proud of all of them, so please do join me in thanking the drainage crew for a job well done.
Here, here.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, before we go to our next item, I just want to remind everyone, if someone would like to comment, they need to do a private chat with Stacy Spencer, and she will call you and unmute you at the appropriate time. And you will be asked to state your name and address for our record, and there will be a 3-minute time limit. All right, our first order of business is to adopt our agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Commissioner Goldthorpe made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Arnold. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam President, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Baker, second by Commissioner Goldthorpe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Now, our regular agenda. First item, we are happy to welcome Mr. Bob McQuaid, our Ada County Assessor. He's here to join us today and give us his annual presentation. It hardly seems like a year since you were last here, but welcome to you, and thank you for zooming in with us. So I will turn it over to you, Mr. McQuaid.
I think Stacy needs to unmute him.
Is he muted?
I just held that better.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. We're not going to do these briefings this year, and at the very last minute, I think it was Boise School District called and asked if I would present this to them, and we did it, and it worked out well. So all of these this year, I've just been doing these in a virtual setting. And I have my stopwatch going for 10 minutes, so I'm going to make this as quick as I possibly can and save a little bit of time for questions. We've just sent out the assessment notices, and we're starting to get calls on those. Two things I want to set the stage is, first of all, by statute, we have to be at market value plus or minus 100% plus or minus 10%. In other words, between 90 and 110%. And that's really important, especially when we go into a discussion about single-family residential. And we know last year that we were at 98%, and that's the level of uniformity. In other words, or the level of assessment. And that is, if we take all of the sales in Ada County, trend was up to January 1st of this year. We take those sales prices and we see what the difference is between our assessed value for January 2019, and we'll say if there is, by area, a gap of 10%, that means we need to increase the values by 10%. But overall, we're at 98% of the sales price. Second thing we need to note, and that is that The assessment was the January 1st of this year. In other words, what happened after January 1st, a lot has happened after January 1st, typically does not come into play for the assessment for the current year, but as I'm going to explain in just a minute, it did come into play this year. The total market value in Ada County is $72 billion. That's up about 7% compared to last year's $7 billion. That's the market value, not the taxable value. To get the taxable value, we would need to take out the homeowner's exemption of $12.3 billion, take out other outstanding exemptions, $150 million, and then add back in operating property. Operating property is that property which is assessed by, it's owned by utilities and assessed by the tax commission. We won't get that numbers until later in the year, probably in August we will get that. So that gives us a potential taxable value of just about $60 billion, and that's probably what you would be setting a levy on. That's a 9% increase over last year. I wanted to talk about residential property. This is going to take up most of our discussion because we did something differently this year than we would typically do. I want to start out by talking about this is the market value of single-family residential. That's $57 billion. That's 8% increase on about 187,000 residential parcels. MLS reported a 10% increase on single-family residential for 2019. Our median increase for single-family residential is about a 5.5% increase, and I want to explain that difference. Typically, we would want to be close to what MLS is saying, and we typically are close to what MLS says. But it was in mid-March, I got a call from someone I have a great deal of respect. She works in the corporate tax department for one of the larger corporations here. And she'd asked me what we were going to be doing with market value this year on single-family residential. And I told her that we really hadn't given it any thought. It was just going to be another year, a typical year. And she commented, if you increase values this year, you're going to see a firestorm because people are really in a lot of pain. In fact, we know today there are about, I think it's 36 million people are unemployed, and there's certainly uncertainty ahead of us, but nothing like the uncertainty that we saw back in March. And I think the context of this discussion I'm telling about all took place in mid-March. It was suggested that we freeze values at the 2019 value. And so I called the Association of Counties, the director there. I talked to the director of the Associated Taxpayers of Idaho and some other assessors. And we had three, and in addition to these discussions, we had representatives from large corporations here in Ada County. We had three discussions. The first two discussions had to do with freezing the value and what it would take to freeze the value. And we just came to the conclusion that there is no way that the value could be frozen. Again, we have to be at market value, plus or minus 10% as of the first of the year. They even went so far to talk to the governor's office, and the governor's office really showed no interest in keeping the value at the level of 2019. That then took us to the discussion that, where I said we were at 98% of our assessed value, that we could be a little bit less aggressive on assessing single-family residential properties this year. And that, in fact, is what we had done. We had the appraisers, and we noticed what they were doing. They went out and they did all of their work the way they would typically do it. And then it was just at the very end of April, we decided to take 5% off of all of the single-family residential properties. And we figured that that's going to give us an assessment level of probably about 94% this year. Again, we're well within the required amount of 90 to 110%. And I'm just going to add that some assessors were just bouncing along at the very bottom of 92, 91%, and they don't have the luxury of taking anything off. They have to be even a little bit more aggressive about their values in the past. It wasn't an easy decision. I really agonized over that for about a month and a half, but that was the decision that I made in the past, or at the end. Now, some people say that this is just kicking the can down the road, that we're going to have to make up for lost ground next year. Well, that may be. We don't know what's going to happen in the single-family residential market. We're getting lots of mixed signals. We know that MLS for the first quarter of this year of 2020 clocked in about a 16% value increase on single-family residential. And for the month of April 19 to April 20 was about 13%. So there's still a lot of signs of strength to the market, but we really need to see how that plays out. I'm just about out of time, so I'm going to quickly go over the rest. Commercial property is about $13 billion. Median change on commercial property is 6.5%. New construction, that's an important piece because we can increase values by the new construction times last year levy. That's $2 billion of new construction. That's an increase of about 10% over last year. And urban renewal is $2.2 billion. That's up over 22%. Myrtle River Street is the largest at $922 million. The fastest growing urban renewal areas are Shoreline. You had 144% increase, and Gateway East was 140% increase. I just want to close with two things. A very brief discussion on tax burden and then just a couple of brief observations. The tax burden for 2019 in Ada County, it's 72% on single-family residential. That's up from 70% last year. And commercial went from 30 down to 28%. And on the surface, it appears that commercial is getting some kind of a break or somehow more of the not picking up their fair share. And I don't think that's the right way to look at this shift in tax burden. On single-family residential, we have 187,000 parcels. And that's 17 times the 1,100 commercial parcels, or 11,000 commercial parcels that we have. So we just have a sphere of residential parcels about like this and commercial about like that. And then the value of all single-family residential is $57 billion, and that's 4 times the value of the commercial at $1.2 billion, or $13 billion, excuse me. So that is why there's this shift towards more residential. We have more residential properties coming online. Residential is appreciating much faster than commercial is. But that's not to say that the fixed homeowners exemption, when it was fixed, I think it was back in 2016, that certainly is not contributing to the shift. It is, but in a way that to me is pretty insignificant to the other factors, putting that burden 72% residential and 28% commercial. I'm just going to end here with just a couple of comments. 2019 actually was slowing down. 2018 was a very robust year. 2019 wasn't quite as strong. Growth in residential values went from 17% to less than 10%. And parcel counts, they grew, although at a slower rate. And then number of subdivisions in 2018, a 28% increase, where last year we saw a 16% increase. With all of this having been said, there's on the single-family housing market, at least to date, appears to be very strong. As I said, April of 19 to April of 20 showed a 13.5% increase. And I just saw that mortgage purchasing applications are up 41%, so there still could be a very strong market this year. Madam President and Commissioners, those are my remarks for 2020.
Appreciate those. Thank you very much, Mr. McQuaid. The one question I had, you already answered. I had wondered if there had been any discussion on perhaps freezing the assessed value for a year or two, kind of on the end of all the discussions that took place last year in the legislature. So as you know, you have had those discussions. That was pointed out to you by that one individual. So you answered mine. Some commissioners may have some other questions, so I will turn over to them. But thank you very much for the information. Commissioners, any questions?
I have a comment, Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
First of all, hi, Bob, and thanks for all your good work. And the only thing I wanted to say was thank you so much for taking it upon yourself to do something that we never thought the legislature really had too much of a place in because of their lack of confidence on the ability of the local governments to take care of their own thing. So I appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam President, if I may, for this moment. I really do appreciate that. It was a very, very difficult decision to arrive at. We had never done it before. But also, they didn't extend filing for income taxes 90 days. We saw a lot of things that were changed because of what had happened. And I hope it's the right thing. And that those comments really helped me give a certain level of comfort. Thank you.
We do appreciate all that you do. It's been quite a year, quite a year. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments for Mr. McQuaid? No? Commissioner Baker? No? I think you're muted there. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Wanted to thank him for coming this year, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. McQuaid.
Looking forward to seeing you next year in person.
Yes, we as well. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye. All right, next on our agenda, Crystal Springs Apartments Certificate of Zoning Compliance Request for Approval. Before we start with that, with our staff presentation, I do want to make a few comments, and hopefully this will clarify what exactly we're doing here today. The land use development review process ensures various projects align with city code for land use and zoning, design aesthetics, and preservation, and long-term master plans for managing growth in each land use jurisdiction, city or county. The land use development review process has several different types of development land use applications. In reviewing the different types of land uses, the review process can have different phases designed to help ensure development projects meet the city's zoning, land use, and design standards. As part of this process, the applicable land use agency, again, city or county, will require applicants to seek comments or recommendations from ACHD regarding the impact of the proposed development on the ACHD transportation system. Depending upon the type of land use application, the city requests ACHD to provide comments for some applications and recommendations for others to provide input regarding the transportation system. The city seeks similar information from other infrastructure agency providers like fire, police, schools, sewer, and water. ACHD's comments or recommendations are non-binding on the land use agency and are only requested to provide information to the land use agency to determine if the proposed development project meets the city's zoning, land use, and design standards in order to ensure that there are adequate public facilities and services to support the development. The land use agency makes the final decision in approving or not approving the proposed development, not ACHD. So I hope that was a little bit of clarification, because I know there's been some confusion out there. So that will hopefully set the tone as we move on. And I will ask Ms. Mindy Wallace to please present our staff report. Mindy?
So is the staff report up?
The beginning of it is right here. Do you not see it, Commissioner Baker?
No, I don't. How do I get it on? Maybe stop video and start it again? No?
Nothing?
No, all I see is... Should I leave and then come back, maybe?
You can try rebooting.
Okay. All right.
We'll wait just a moment for Commissioner Baker to sign back on.
I'm back. Thanks.
Okay, can you see it? Okay, super. All right. Ms. Wallace.
Okay, Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Mindy Walsh, Development Services. Before you today, we have a decision briefing for the Crystal Springs Apartments. This is a certificate of zoning compliance application with the City of Star. And for this application, ACHD is a recommending body. Today, we'll have a brief project overview. We'll touch on the site history, discuss the traffic impact study and ACHD's maximum traffic on one access policy, talk about the reclassification of area roadways, neighborhood concerns, and staff's recommendation. So this is a zoning compliance application for a design and zoning review of a 96-unit multifamily apartment project on approximately 15 acres. The site has frontage on Calhoun Place, the local roadway, and is estimated to generate 102 vehicle trips per day, with 56 of those occurring during the PM peak hour. To me, okay. Thank you. Access to this site is provided via local access roadways constructed by ITD as part of the State Highway 16 extension project that were later dedicated to ACHD. Those are shown in blue and green. And then there's one existing connection to a subdivision, Wild Branch Drive, which is located west of the site. And for orientation, we have Parkstone or Heron River subdivision is located to the west. This blue area is Calhoun and Wild Branch Street. Those are local roadways. The green is Moyle Avenue. That's a collector. And then here at Plummer and State Highway 44, we have a signalized intersection going in this summer. And then at Moyle and State Highway 44, ITD has indicated that that intersection would be restricted to left in, right out. ACHD previously reviewed this site as part of a rezone application in 2016. That application was to rezone the site from rural urban transitional to R10 or higher to allow for the development of multifamily housing. As a result of the rezoning, the applicant entered into a development agreement with the City of Star, which is known as Ordinance 285, which requires a certificate of zoning compliance application like the one before you. Under this ordinance, the certificate of zoning compliance application is a staff level approval in the City of Star with no public hearing process, and the review only addresses the items that are before you on the slide. A traffic impact study was prepared for this project, meeting all ACHD policies and standards. There is some confusion regarding whether or not the Ridley's currently under construction within Heron River was included as part of the traffic study, and it was, as was the full build out of the Heron River subdivision. Although the application before you is for 96 multifamily dwelling units, the study included a second phase that included an additional 100 units. So the traffic study included an analysis of a total 196 multifamily dwelling units. At full build out of the 196 multifamily dwelling units, it's estimated that the site would generate approximately 1,144 vehicle trips per day, exceeding ACHD's maximum traffic on one access policy. As I mentioned before, access to this site is provided via Wild Branch east of Moyle and Calhoun Place, both classified as local roadways. ACHD policy allows up to 1,000 trips per day on local streets with only one access, which applies to both roadways. To address this, the study suggests that ACHD could approve a higher trip threshold on these roadways, reclassify these roadways to collectors to allow a higher trip threshold of 3,000 trips per day, or limit the number of units that could be developed to stay within ACHD policy thresholds. This would limit the development to 125 multifamily dwelling units. Staff does not recommend granting a modification of policy to allow additional trips as part of this or any future development application in this area. Does not recommend the reclassification of the roadways to collectors to allow additional capacity, and this will be discussed a little bit later in the presentation. But staff recommends limiting the number of units to 125 total that could be developed. The 96 proposed as part of this application plus an additional 29. This will ensure that Wild Branch Street east of Moyle Avenue and Calhoun Place do not exceed the 1,000 trip per day thresholds on local streets, and this will also use up the available capacity on these roadways, limiting the potential for future development in this area. As part of an update to ACHD's master street map, the City of Star requested that Wild Branch Street east of Moyle Avenue be reclassified from a local street to a collector roadway to support the land uses that were approved as part of their 2019 comprehensive plan update. The reclassification of Wild Branch Drive was also mentioned as a way to increase allowable daily volumes in the traffic study. Staff does not recommend the reclassification of Wild Branch Street east of Moyle as part of this application. The reclassification of the roadway should be considered as part of an overall review of the area, not on a parcel-by-parcel basis. Wild Branch Street and Calhoun Place were constructed to provide local access to properties impacted by ITD State Highway 16 Extension Project. These roadways have limited access to State Highway 44 and were not constructed to support mixed-use commercial land designations on STAR's comprehensive plan. Without additional access to State Highway 44 will be needed to support these land uses. Without the additional access to State Highway 44, the land uses will overwhelm the local street network and impact local residential streets within the adjacent Heron River subdivision. ACHD policy would not allow the approval of any additional development in this area until additional access to State Highway 44 is in place. Additional access to State Highway 44 should be a coordinated planning effort between ITD, the City of Star, and ACHD. Additionally, to allow public testimony regarding the reclassification of roadways, any reclassification of Wild Branch Street or Calhoun Place should be done as part of the master street map process. An update to the master street map is tentatively scheduled for September of 2020. As part of the 2016 rezone and the current Certificate of Zoning Compliance application, neighbors have raised concerns regarding increased traffic that this development may generate and how that traffic may impact the existing local streets within the Heron River subdivision, specifically the potential for cut-through traffic between the site and Plummer Road via Wild Branch Drive, shown in yellow. It's an existing local street with front-end housing. The traffic impact study included an analysis of the potential cut-through traffic on Wild Branch Drive at full build-out of the development, so the 196 total units. ACHD policy allows up to 2,000 trips per day on a local street with more than one access point. Wild Branch east of Plummer Way had an average daily traffic count of 372 trips in May of 2019. At build-out of the entire multifamily development, the 196 units, Moyle Avenue restricted to left in, right out, it's anticipated that the total daily average traffic on this segment of roadway would be approximately 669 vehicle trips per day. At 669 vehicle trips per day, Wild Branch Drive would operate below ACHD's acceptable level of service threshold of 2,000 trips per day. Staff does not recommend any traffic calming on Wild Branch Drive as part of this application, as this segment of Wild Branch Drive is anticipated to operate within ACHD policy thresholds, and the street already contains some passive design elements, such as curvature of the roadway. Additionally, limiting the development in the area east of Heron River to 125 multifamily dwelling units as recommended by staff will reduce the impacts to the local streets within Heron River. So in summary, ACHD is a recommending body for this application. Staff does not support any modifications of policy or reclassification of roadways to allow for increased vehicle trips on Wild Branch Street, east of Moyle Avenue or Calhoun Place. Additional access to State Highway 44 will be necessary to serve the land uses adopted in STAR's comprehensive plan. Reclassification of the area roadways should be done through the master street map process to allow public input. Traffic calming on Wild Branch Drive is not recommended, as the roadway is anticipated to operate below ACHD's acceptable level of service policy thresholds, and staff recommends that this development be limited to 125 total multifamily units. This would use up all of the available capacity on these roadways, limiting the potential for future development in this area. Staff recommends approval of the staff report as written, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mindy. I did want to mention that a couple of weeks ago I did get a call from the mayor of Star. He had a question about the staff report. We did not discuss it, and I requested that he have his staff, a member of his staff, contact Ms. Wallace. So that was the sum total of our interaction, but I did want to get that out there for the record. So thank you very much, Mindy. Are there any questions, commissioners, for Ms. Wallace?
I have a question.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, Mindy, thanks. When I looked at this map and the layout, it's right by the river, the commercial parts of Star to the north of State Street. So it looks like it's almost like landlocked, and yet there's no reference at all to our bike master plan or to any sort of neighborhood pedestrian and bicycle plan. So while I can see, and there's a lot of references to roads in and around this development, there is no reference whatsoever to any sort of connectivity. Is that normal? Well, of course, I don't see it in a lot of plans, but it would help us to do an analysis. Otherwise, the assumption just has to be every single person who's going to move into this area is going to be expected to drive somewhere, and that it's completely car dependent, which is unfortunate because it's near Star and it's near the river. It's near the very areas, and presumably there will be commercial development too that's coming in. So is there a reason we've excluded the connectivity and the analysis of routes that one would bike or walk to, and only focus on the car trips?
President May, Commissioner Hanson, as you are aware, we don't have a policy that requires that at this time. And in this area, it is likely that there would be a lot of car-dependent trips with this type of development.
Thank you, Mindy. Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Goldthorpe, did you have your...
I do, and I was just kind of going on an extension of that. Would it be possible, if the commission wished, to recommend that some more connectivity issues be addressed?
President May and Commissioner Goldthorpe, it is something that we are discussing since the hearing last week. However, we didn't have an opportunity to update the staff report prior to this week's hearing.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, hearing none, thank you, Ms. Wallace. We will turn to Mr. Taunton, who is representing the developer. Mr. Taunton, do you have some comments that you would like to make?
Madam President, yes. It's Bob Taunton. My address is 2724 South Palmetier Way.
Thank you.
I'm representing the owner of the property and the developer of the project, which is Star River Holdings. The ownership is consistent since the original zoning. I guess what I'd like to really mention is that the owner of the property has construction plans into the city. So this isn't really an academic exercise. It really is intended to enable the project to move forward. The developer has financing, is ready to sign a contract with the contractor and get the project underway. Appreciate Mindy's staff report. We, of course, have had an opportunity to look at it. I think she's covered a lot of the issues. I'm pleased that she was able to add the comment that the Ridley's commercial development and the full build out of Heron River was included in the TIS. As she mentioned, there's been a lot of confusion about that. Might mention that in terms of connectivity, the owner developer has been speaking with Star about their long-term goal to have really a greenbelt bike ped access along the river on the north side of the river. So they're cooperating with Star in that area, although there aren't any specific plans that we can show you today. So I guess the final comment I have is I have John Ringert assisting me today from Kittleson in case there's any specific transportation questions that are beyond my ability. And would just like to say that we are in agreement with the staff report, and we concur with the specific conditions of approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Although I might say that if following the public testimony, in case there's any reason for us to provide any clarification, we would like to have that opportunity. Thank you, Madam President.
Absolutely. We will definitely circle back with you. Thank you, Mr. Taunton. Is there a staff member from the City of Star? Anyone from the City of Star that would like to comment? Okay, hearing no response on that one. Commissioners, before we move on, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Taunton? Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I have a question. I would have asked this of the City of Star, but I guess I'll ask you, Bob. Maybe you can forward it to them. We updated our policies a number of years ago regarding the minimum width for local roads. And all of the jurisdictions in Ada County said they were good with 27-foot local roads, except Star. So as they apply to Star, they're actually wider, and I think that sort of fuels the concern of wider roads, faster traffic on a local road. Is there, have you addressed that to try and go for the minimum? And you would have to then ask for probably a waiver or something, a policy to make that collector road, no, not a collector road, it's a local road, Wild Branch, consistent with the new local roads for the rest of the county.
Madam President, thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for the question. Actually, with this particular phase of the project, the only requirement we have is to improve the immediate frontage on the cul-de-sac. So we will not be doing any improvements to the local roads. But certainly, I think your suggestion is a great idea. And once perhaps the commercial development to the north that's also owned by the same property owner and developer gets underway, then that would be a situation where we would be developing the frontage on our side. There are other landowners that have land use approvals to the west of us. So I think that's a great idea to request that STAR consider their policies to reduce the size of the roadways.
Yeah, I would encourage that. You know, I agree we should not be turning this into a collector road, but a road can feel like a collector road, even though it isn't one, because of the way it's designed. And that's my fear on this road, that it will feel like it's a collector road, and then would take that kind of, and mostly I'm concerned about the speeds when you have that kind of width. And there'll be a lot of people, presumably families with children, living in those apartments and houses.
All right, any other questions, commissioners? All right, Stacy, do we have individuals that have signed up?
Yes, we do. We have
comment?
Kent Rock from the Heron River HOA. They've requested a slight bit more time than the 3 minutes representing the HOA.
All right, I believe we usually do 10 minutes for the HOA. Is that our established standard, Ms. Spencer?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rock?
Madam President, members of the Commission, can you hear me?
Yes, if you please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Kent Rock. I live on 9515 West Wild Branch Drive, and I am the Vice Chair of the HOA. We also have here in the room with me the President and the Secretary of the HOA.
And you are the spokesperson, correct?
I am the spokesperson.
Okay, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. For a few points, and I don't think I'll take nearly 10 minutes. The Heron River HOA has not been included in recent traffic discussions. I've been on the board for a little over 2 years, and don't know of any time that any member of the board has been included in any of the traffic discussions as they relate to Wild Branch Drive west of Moyle. We've heard a lot of conversation about east of Moyle, and that is, I think it's a different story on the west of Moyle. As noted in the staff report, Wild Branch is not designed to be a collector, and certainly west of it, it's too narrow. We have children on bicycles, scooters, skateboards all over. If you were there today with the garbage cans out, it would be hard to see how you could drive much more traffic down that. It would be higher traffic levels would make it difficult for homeowners to back out of driveways. The second point is that the traffic studies regarding Wild Branch are more than a year old. The ones I saw that were sent to us were dated May 2nd of 2019. And as things have grown there, and as was mentioned with the Ridleys going in, that has a real potential to drive traffic down Wild Branch. The staff report indicates that ITD and Mindy reported that ITD is considering making Moyle a right turn only street. That would be disastrous for Wild Branch, because anybody going to Ridley's, anybody going to downtown Star, the library, churches, the stores, City Hall, whatever they're going to, would have basically two options. One, to turn right and hit Highway 16 and either go to Floating Feather or Chinden and loop around from the backside of Star, or to shortcut through Wild Branch to Plummer, where there will be a stoplight. I think it's pretty intuitive that which choice they'd make. It would be to go to Wild Branch instead of out on the collector, and thus, again, Wild Branch becomes a collector in a sense. Well, we agree with the staff position that in the roadway segments, maximum traffic access segment of section B2B, that Wild Branch should not be reclassified as a collector. We do absolutely agree with that. We do not agree with the opinion in section C1 that traffic calming measures on Wild Branch should be considered the last option. Actually, that should be right up to the front. Considering the number of children, the narrowness of the roads, and the bus stops, and those that I mentioned previously, traffic calming should be a primary option. Without such measures, Wild Branch will become a de facto collector. So, as solutions, as a board, we see that the traffic study needs to be updated. Well, actually, that's been done, apparently, according to Mindy's comments. It has included Ridley's on it. It wasn't clear in the report that that was included, especially since the version that we have was old. We believe a stoplight needs to be installed at Moyle and Highway 44, preferably a sensor light that senses the cars coming off of Moyle and can turn, or as I said, a right turn only. It turns Wild Branch into a collector, because everybody going west will go through there to Plummer to get to the light. We believe that the traffic calming measures need to be highly considered and implemented, and that Heron River HOA needs to be included in all discussions relating to the traffic on Moyle and Wild Branch. Those are my comments. If anybody has any questions, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rock. Do any commissioners have a question for Mr. Rock? Commissioner Hanson? Commissioner Hanson had his hand up, then I'll come right to you, Commissioner Baker.
Thank you, Kent and Mr. Rock, for speaking. You talked about Wild Branch to the west of Moyle. The staff report only refers to existing traffic calming or speed management being basically the curves in the road. Are there any others? Are there any points, bulb outs or chicanes or speed humps or stop signs, those sorts of things that calm traffic?
There are none of those.
Okay. Is there, you probably don't know, so it's probably for the staff, what's the width of that road on that the west part of West Branch?
I don't know the width. I could measure it off and step it off, but I haven't. It's a narrow, in-tract residential street. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I had somebody parked a pickup across the road from my place, and I had a hard time. Had to be real careful backing out of my driveway not to hit that. So it's pretty narrow.
From my standpoint, that's a good thing. If it feels narrow, then cars go slow. So that evidence is encouraging, because there's way too many residential roads that feel like they're runways. So thank you.
Commissioner Hanson, and I think the other big thing is that we do have a lot of children on there, and they are on their scooters, they are on their bikes, a lot of walkers. We have a couple ponds there that neighborhoods fish on, and so it's not designed at all to be a collector, but it could become a de facto collector.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rock. Commissioner Baker. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I didn't actually have a question for Kent Rock other than to just say hi, Kent. Nice to hear from you again. I did have a question for Mindy. What was the reasoning for Moyle being a write-in, write-out only, and is that the state that fixes that, or do we have some input into that?
Madam President, Commissioner Baker, that has been ITD's position, that with this development they would restrict Moyle to left in, write out, and that's to address operational concerns as well as safety, that people aren't making a left turn out. So they'd be able to turn left in at Moyle and then right in, right out.
Right. But they would have that same opinion about a traffic signal there as well?
Commissioner Baker, ITD has been pretty firm on saying no to a signal at that location at this time. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be evaluated in the future, but based on the information that we have today, it's been a no.
Okay, well, I understand that STAR is in conversations with District 3 of ITD about, perhaps getting more control over the segment of Highway 44 from Highway 16, through the city of STAR. So if that happens, then I would assume that we would be involved in those conversations as well.
Typically, yes, our traffic services department would be involved in those types of reviews.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, no other questions. Stacy, do we have anyone else to address the commission? And thank you, Mr. Rock.
Yes, we do. We have Michael Pace.
Mr. Pace, welcome.
Chase, C-H-S-E. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you for your time today, Commissioners.
Okay, if you could
Yeah,
state
can you
your
hear me?
name. Yes, we can. If you just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. There we go. Thank you for your time today, Commissioners. I'm Mike Chase. I own, among many other things, 398 South River Mist in Star, Idaho, which is part of the Heron River community, in a section known as the Preserve. It's the lower half of the map, as you see there. I'm here today to reiterate what all of our attorneys' letters, including the law firm of Racine Olson, who represent our interests in Idaho, have told you. Number one, the Zoom meeting is not an appropriate public meeting, as the majority of residents in Star, particularly Heron River, are seniors. Many of them are not tech-savvy enough to join this meeting. At the May 20th meeting, when this issue was tabled, the frustration is clearly illustrated by Commissioner Baker with her head in her hands on video decrying the chaos of an online public meeting and the challenges it presents. We agree. Meanwhile, the Idaho governor's restrictions for COVID-19 with regards to gatherings of 50 or more will not subside until late June at the earliest. This means that the tech-savvy among us are unable to host a large TV or monitor at our clubhouses for those voices wishing to be heard. Effectively, you have silenced north of 50% of the voices in the Star community who are over 50 years old by using this online venue, even worse so in Heron River. I would ask that you table this meeting yet again until a real public meeting can be held so that those voices can be heard. They do have important feedback with the community. Number two, while we recognize that ACHD is merely a recommending body to the City of Star, as is ITD, who we also met with, the legal and factual basis it is using to make recommendations at all for Crystal Springs Apartment is fatally flawed. The Traffic Information Survey did not take into the potential of Heron River becoming a private and gated community. That issue will probably be litigated. We do not believe it took into account Ridley, so I need an updated TIS. If this was just done in the last few weeks, we didn't see it in the report, at least not in the original one. With no left turn, as Ken pointed out, traveling east will have to exit via Heron River. There's also an exit to Main Street, so they'll be getting to the City of Star, primarily through Heron River, and a light at Plummer. Anyone going to or from Ridley's will do the same. I don't really think that putting a light at Moyle is going to help. That's just going to seriously screw up the 44, even though it does offer some relief to Heron River. The majority of Heron River residents are over 50, but the majority of our young residents who have families live in Waterview off of Wild Branch. Their bus stop is there for these kids, and they're constantly running in and out of the street. ACHD today is guessing that 1,000 or 2,000 trips will be the case, but it may be much higher, and these kids are definitely going to be in harm's way. Why not base this off reality by analyzing traffic once Ridley's is completed, which is only a few months away in August 2020? These are significant facts which cannot be overlooked. I would submit that it's impossible to make any recommendations that don't address these. Meanwhile, as noted in our meeting with the developer, with ITD, April 13th, the rework of the 1644 is 7 to 10 years out, will cost $40 million, and the developer is only required to pay a 0.54% impact fee or $216,000. That contribution is obviously not going to solve any issues so long as it makes a thorough analysis of the Heron River traffic debacle all the more important and timely. I would conclude by pointing out that ACHD tabling this issue until a current new traffic information survey is completed will not disadvantage anyone. The City of Star just voted to do their own traffic survey, and so should you. So this should take time. So I guess that's my statement. I appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Any comments, commissioners? All right, Stacy?
The last person I have is Lisa Brady. She said that she may want to, so this would be her time.
Okay. Lisa?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Please state your name and address, please.
Yep, Lisa Brady, 1506 North 12th Street, Boise, Idaho. I'm the director of the Safe Routes to School program here in the Treasure Valley. We work in Star Elementary School and Star Middle School, and I'm also serving at your pleasure as the ACHD Bicycle Advisory Chair, and we're in review of the Star Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. And I just want to bring attention to two projects that are on that plan for Star, which connect to that green belt off of the river. And hearing the neighborhood comments regarding kids out there biking and walking right now, adding as many trips as I'm hearing is of a deep concern to me, as I express on each one of these calls, for kids having activity in their lives, but also because this is a potential greenbelt connection or a connection to the river. A very good attention needs to be paid to this whole area for that amount of trips. So I just want to put that on the record, that Star Bike Ped Plan has two projects right in that impacted area. So please let us take a look at that. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any comments for Lisa? Thank you, Ms. Brady. Stacy, any additional people, or was that it?
We are done with sign-ups, so if Mr. Touton wanted to rebut.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, I have a couple of comments.
All right.
Just referring to Kent Rock's testimony, we did meet. I met with Kent and the HOA president personally on May 9th, and we went down to the property. We talked about the project. We talked about the ACHD report. They did not have the ITD letter. I gave that to them. They were not familiar with the STAR eCamp plan that was updated and adopted earlier this year, which does show a long-term vision for circulation in the corridor. I provided that to them as well. So we did meet. I believe Kent said that there hadn't been any meetings. Secondly, we've never had a request from Heron River to talk about transportation. So, you know, this isn't a one-sided situation. It should be that if the residents had a strong concern about it, other than, you know, the letters that we've seen, we could have had conversations previously. But one of the factors that needs to be considered is that neither the developer nor the residents have jurisdiction over the roadways. ITD has jurisdiction over Highway 44. ACHD has jurisdiction now over the local roads. And this really was a good opportunity to get all of the facts on the table by a review of the TIS for the project by ACHD and a clear statement of what their policies are. I mean, that's really the best opportunity for the neighbors and the developers to talk about, okay, what could happen, what's possible, what works for ACHD. And I think the ACHD staff has indicated what the position is. One of the things that I've noted, you know, kind of over the years I've been here, is that there may be a confusion between ACHD's policies and comprehensive plan policies. They're not the same thing. ACHD's policies are ordinances. They're just like the ordinances that are adopted by the cities for their development regulations. So they're not guidelines as policies are in comprehensive plans. Mr. Chase's comment about updating the TIS, kind of thinking that the Ridley's situation, that the commercial development and the build out of Heron River, or the subdivision as it's known by, is a recent update. It's not. It was included in the TIS that was done originally. So there's no reason to update the TIS for those two matters since it was already included. And then the last comment by Lisa Brady, hi Lisa, in talking about connections to the river, one of the design elements in this plan for the multifamily piece is a connection from the cul-de-sac, a pedestrian connectivity all the way down to the river. So the developer really has gone over and beyond providing a connection to the river and future, you know, bike ped connection along the north side of the river. So with that, I stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taunton. Any commissioners have any additional questions for Mr. Taunton? I would like to give Mindy Wallace an opportunity if she has any additional information she'd like to provide as well.
President May, one question to Bob, if I could.
You bet, Commissioner Hanson.
So the points you raised, I think that's great, that there would be pedestrian or public access, I assume, from that cul-de-sac on South Calhoun down to the Greenbelt. This issue has arisen in Eagle, where the city is desperately trying to figure out places where the public, people who don't live in the neighborhood, can park and then access Greenbelt. Has that been taken into consideration? I mean, that's the trade-off. Obviously, we want access to the Greenbelt, public access, and it doesn't look like there's many places near Star you can just park and walk a very short distance down to the Greenbelt, public parking, people who don't live right along the river.
Madam President, Commissioner, yes, the pathway is public. It's not just for the residents. And there is a proposal by the developer to donate the area where the pond is located at the south end of the property as a park to Star. Now that's just preliminary discussions. And with that would be an offer to provide public parking at the cul-de-sac area, you know, just at the entrance into the parking. So that is being contemplated. It's been preliminary discussions, and I'm sure that there will be further discussions once the project gets its approval and can start construction.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Thank you, Mr. Taunton.
Thank you.
Ms. Wallace, did you have anything you'd like to speak to
Madam President,
before we move on?
no further comments.
All right. Any commissioner questions for Ms. Wallace before we move on? All right. Hearing none. Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody's comments and feedback. So, commissioners, you have before you a request for approval, Crystal Springs Apartment Certificate of Zoning Compliance.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I would move that we approve the staff report on this with additional recommendation to very seriously consider the connectivity issues to both the river and to Star itself.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Goldthorpe, and was that Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
The seconded. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, I have a question of Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, if connectivity issues is kind of broad, are you saying, now we've had some discussion of the bike ped connectivity, but we also had discussion of the preference for Moyle being a full intersection, because that refers to connectivity for cars to the rest of Star, because it's to the west. So westbound traffic is going to probably, east and westbound traffic may be affected by that. So is that what you're referring to, or is it just because connectivity?
Primarily for bicyclists and pedestrians getting from the new development clear through west on the local roads, functioning as collectors as far west as they can get up into Star to the business district, school.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a big issue. It's just complicated. And I think the fact that ITD is a separate entity and has to build a intersection, and it's already said it's not going to build a full intersection, basically cuts off half the directional traffic to using that little segment. So, okay, that clarifies things.
Madam President.
Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that, whatever, I don't know, we don't necessarily need to take the lead on discussing this with ITD, but like I said earlier, I believe STAR is having conversations, and so we should try to participate as much as possible in those regarding that whole right in, right out intersection at Moyle.
I agree, and I think Mindy spoke to that we would be a part of those conversations going forward.
Right.
Along with the city. Any further discussion, commissioners?
Commissioner Arnold has a comment.
Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am going to support the motion because we are only a recommending body in this situation. However, I do have to say that I agree with the gentleman who commented earlier that these Zoom meetings are not, frankly, I don't think we are adequately serving our constituents by having Zoom-only meetings, and we are not providing an adequate opportunity for people to participate. So we need to look at some creative solutions for that to allow our constituents access to the commissioners and to these meetings.
Thank you, and I think we are following the governor's recommendations, and we're expecting an update on the next phase. So we're definitely engaged in watching that.
Well,
thank you.
Just to follow up to that, we are allowed to have up to 10 people participate in these meetings in person, and I think there has to be some way we can allow people to come into the auditorium. I mean, frankly, the doors here are locked. No one can walk into this room without someone letting them in, and I just don't think that is adequate service to our constituents. So I think we have to come up with some way for perhaps people can wait in their cars until they're called to come in, or something to allow people to come in and have access to their commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Arnold. So noted. Any other commissioner comments?
President May, I have a quick question related to Mindy.
Commissioner Hanson.
If Mindy is available. This issue, if I've realized there's been cases where neighborhoods have come back, had second thoughts, and said we would like this to be a private road. If the neighborhood and the city of Star and ACHD all agrees that that little portion of West Wild Branch become private and essentially cut that off, wouldn't that force ITD's hand to make Moyle a full intersection, because that would be the only full access to the neighborhood, to this whole area to the west?
President May and Commissioner Hanson, I can't really speak for what ITD may or may not do in that circumstance. If this were to become a gated private road, then all of these roads would need to become private. State law precludes gating of a public street, and so we couldn't have these public streets intersecting a private roadway, and at that time it would become a full vacation. So those are things that could be considered, but we have to look at the roadway network and the use of the roadways and who's using them, and through that vacation process.
Yeah. That raised that question that. So I can't remember which one of these folks mentioned some reference to these should have been private roads to start with.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Any other comments? All right. We have a motion and a second. We're going to go to a vote. All those in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Motion carries. Our next item on the agenda is public communications.
I do not have anyone signed up.
Nobody has signed up for that. So with that, then commissioners, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Taunton, and everybody that has provided comment today. We appreciate your time, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.